my ears, there are only bips. And when I touch something, once you get past the skin, there are only bips. And what Cajal was saying is that that's what's in the nervous system. It's just this much at this point on my body. And out of those bips, the brain constructs a three-dimensional world. Some of you may know the story of the homunculus. Do you all know the homunculus? Well, if you're trying to understand how the brain works, that's our brain. Okay, and there's some object out here. What's going on inside? Well, one idea is that the eye is like a television camera. And inside the brain, you have somebody looking at the television screen. And that's how the brain works. That the eye creates an image inside the brain, and then this little homunculus looks at the TV screen. Well, of course, there's no homunculus. It's just the brain. And then you've just moved the problem back, so you have to explain how the homunculus works. So that's hardly a solution. Let me just define for a moment autopoiesis. Autopoiesis is a term created by Umberto Maturana, and it means self-production. It's contrasted with allopoiesis, A-L-L-O-P-O-I-S-I-E-S-I-S, which means other production. What Maturana was trying to do was to explain how to distinguish a living system from a non-living system. And what he said is that a living system is a network of processes that create the entities of the living system, so that cells take in raw material through the bloodstream and put them together in such a way that the structure of the cell is maintained over time. The components of the cell may change. The molecules in the cell change, but the structure of the cell remains the same, so that the processes within the cell replicate both the structure of the cell and the processes of the cell. And that process of self-replication is the process of autopoiesis. It's the process of self-production. Now, you can apply this distinction of allopoiesis and autopoiesis to an organization like a business firm, just to see the distinction between the two. If you look at the Ford Motor Company as a consumer, you will probably think of it as an allopoietic system. It produces something other than itself. The Ford Motor Company produces automobiles, right? That's what you're interested in. You're interested in the car. You take the organization for granted. The manager of the corporation will tend to view the corporation as an autopoietic system, because he's responsible for maintaining the viability of the organization as a whole. The fact that the organization produces automobiles is almost incidental. That's just something that you do in order to generate the money so you can pay your workers so that they will stay together and maintain the organization as a viable entity. But that's the difference between autopoietic and allopoietic. An allopoietic system, you produce something other than yourself. An autopoietic system is that you maintain the processes and the structures of the system itself. Okay, now let's go through some experiments. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the blind spot, and you've probably done the blind spot experiment. Has anybody not done it? Okay, a few have not done it. Then let's do it. If you take a sheet of paper and you put 2 dots on it, I think it may be the next one. Yeah. So if you're looking down from the top, and you have two eyes, your right eye and your left eye, and you put something in front of your left eye, so you're not looking at your left eye, and you have a sheet of paper with, say, a square and a circle, about like that. Then you close your left eye, hold the sheet of paper out in front of you, focus on the left object, and then move the piece of paper forward and back. And right about there for me, you will see that the object on the right-hand side disappears. Okay, you have to move it slowly. Don't move it too fast, or it won't work. You have to move it slowly. But there will come a time, if you focus on the one on the left, that the one on the right will disappear. Now, why does that happen? The reason that happens is that your retina is not complete. There's a gap. At the place where the optic nerve leaves the back of the retina, there are no receptor cells. So if you look out at the world normally and you don't see any black holes, the reason is that your brain is helping you by performing an extrapolation. It's filling in from the surrounding territory. Also, memory helps, so that if you're moving your eye, it'll remember what was there before and fill it in. So that if you're looking at a doorway with one eye, and that's the information you're getting, your brain is saying, well, I know how doors work. The frame is continuous. And so it fills it in for you. So the point is that your brain is aiding your perception. Now here's another experiment you can do. If you take your fingers and put them underneath your eyeball and gently move your eyeball relative to your skull, what do you see happening? The room jumps around, right? Pretty amazing. I mean, you can make the room jump a lot just by putting a little bit of pressure on the bottom of your eyes. Well, I would maintain that's surprising because many of us have played football or some sort of sports, and let's say you go out for a pass, and you catch the pass, and you bump against some would-be tacklers and take the ball in for a touchdown. But during that entire process, you're getting banged around a good bit. But the stadium remains stationary, right? The stadium doesn't jump around all over the place. And yet, if you just move your eyeball a little bit in your skull, you can make the room jump around a great deal. So the brain is computing a stable reality. The brain is integrating information from your muscles, your bones, your eyes, and computing a stable world. Now, an experiment was done some time back with probably sophomores. They're the usual subjects of experiments. You put glasses on people that turn the world upside down. You may or may not know that my image on your retina is upside down. Okay, so if this is your eyeball seen from the side, and that's me on the left, my head is down and my feet are up on the back of your retina. But you don't perceive me that way because your brain interprets the image on the retina such that the world remains in a stable configuration. Well, you can do experiments with people that turn the world upside down. And they have to learn how to walk and how to ride a bike and so forth. But after a time, I'm not sure how long, the world goes back to where it's supposed to be. However, they were surprised that one day it snowed, and for the students wearing the glasses, the snow fell up. So the rest of the world was okay, but the snow fell up. So you have to relearn many things. Here's another example. Let's say you're listening to somebody speak who speaks with an accent, like if I'm listening to somebody from Australia speak. in the beginning, I have to listen pretty hard, because the words don't sound quite right. But after about 15 or 20 minutes, I'm no longer aware of the fact that I'm listening hard because my brain has learned an algorithm. And it's applying that algorithm automatically below the level of consciousness. So once again, the brain is helping me create an agreeable world for my internal conceptions. Here's another example. Let's say you go to a cocktail party, and there's a conversation on the left, and a conversation in front of you, and a conversation on the right. And your decision is, which conversation shall I join? So you listen to this conversation for a while, and then you listen to that conversation, then you listen to this conversation, and you decide, this one sounds most interesting, and so you join that conversation. Now, how did you do that? The sound reaching your ears was the same in each case, but you were able to filter it such that this one had meaning, and you didn't pay attention to the others, and then this one had meaning, and then this one had meaning. So I would submit that you don't know how you do that, but you do know that you're able to do that, and you can control it. So you have some control over the fact that your brain is creating a world that is agreeable to you. Okay, now, another true story from the history of neurophysiology. In wars, soldiers are injured, and this is helpful to neurophysiological researchers. In some war, it might have been World War I, the soldiers would peer over the edge of the foxhole, and some of them were shot straight through the head. And they survived. It's unusual, not very many did, but some survived. Now, the nature of bullet wounds is that most of the damage occurs at the exit wound rather than the entry wound. And the back part of your brain is the occipital cortex. That's where vision is processed. It's sort of contradictory. The eyes are on the front, but the information is interpreted at the back. So given the understanding of neurophysiology, the assumption of the doctors was that the soldiers would have trouble seeing, but they reported no problem in seeing. What they did have trouble doing was walking. They sort of walked by dragging their foot. But there was nothing wrong with their muscles, their bones, or the nervous system that controlled walking. So the doctors were puzzled. Why are they walking that way? And why are they not reporting a problem with vision? Well, one day, they figured out what was going on. And it happened when a doctor went to see a patient, and the doctor entered the room carrying a clipboard and a pencil. He walks in the room and says, "Hi, Joe, how are you today?" Joe says, "I'm fine, Doc, how are you?" He says, and then the doctor asks him a series of questions, and he makes notes and so forth. And then he said, "Would you like a cigarette?" And the patient says yes. So he reaches into his pocket. The doctor pulls out a pack of cigarettes and offers it to the patient. And the patient does not reach for a cigarette. But the patient is looking at the doctor. And so the doctor said, "Here's a cigarette." And the patient says, "Where?" The doctor says, "In my hand." The patient is looking at his hand. The patient says, "No, it's not." And so the doctor says, "What is in my hand?" And the patient says, "A pencil." So then the doctor knew how to make the patient walk. You know what they did? They blindfolded them. The idea was that they were constructing a three-dimensional world using their eyes, but their eyes, or their vision, was damaged. But they didn't know that because their blind spot